What is going on, guys? We are back for week 4 of Stack Fest. It still gets me every time when I get to say Stack Fest because it's a wonderful name for the show. If you have not watched this show before here on RotoGrinders, we go through a little bit different, right? We are kind of going game by game, but we're going game by game through the most notable fantasy football games for DFS purposes because we want to load up on these games. We want to be playing quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers from both teams and finding our way to the top of tournaments. I am, as always, your host, Erik Beimfohr, joined by Matt Kelley and Dario. Dario, I got to say it right. Offstein, correct?
Yeah.
You have to remind me. Okay, good. We got it.
You got my name, okay? Matt Kelley. That's
Matt Kelley. That one. I struggled. I struggled.
Easy enough.
That must have been so hard for substitute teachers back in the day. You know, they come in, they look at the rules.
Well, Beimfohr. I mean, he knows. He's living that life.
I said the first time we met, Dario, that I was like, I'm gonna forget this probably, but I need to make sure that I say your name correctly because I had that substitute teacher thing for myself that nobody could ever say my name right, and it's similar to why I may not say your name correctly. But we're here. It's week 4. Really quickly, we can talk about week 3, which I thought was We were
due for a weird week, weren't we? We had two straightforward weeks, and then we had a weird week.
Somebody mentioned on another show that said you probably had the optimal if you left like $5,000 in salary on the table or something, because none of the superstars really got there. And now this week, I think that's kind of interesting because we don't, outside of quarterback, we don't have a lot of superstars on this slate. So Dario, how was last week, and then initial thoughts on week 4?
Yeah, I mean, last week, I think that the Jalen Hurts double stacks kind of paid off if you went ahead and did it.
They did pay off. They just didn't win the whole thing, but they paid off big.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that there were just so many touchdowns scored by obscure guys. The big names didn't hit, like you said. So definitely a weird week. And then this week is a whole different challenge where, like, right off the bat, there's, only 3 elite quarterbacks on the slate, really, because Herbert's status is, I think, very iffy. And then you're looking at some potentially interesting plays like Geno Smith and Marcus Mariota. And it's just like, oh God, like what are we getting ourselves into?
Matt, how are you feeling?
Lamar Jackson. This is like, this is one of those things where can we no metrics, right? Lamar Jackson, 38 Draftkings points a game. It's amazing.
It's crazy.
Amazing. Yeah, he was we talk about the going with the premium mobile quarterbacks most weeks. And we talked about, Lamar last week, Jalen Hurts and Kyler. And if you're going to aggressively game stack, you want to aggressively game stack more of the pocket passers because they can spread the ball around more and involve more players in the touchdowns. Whereas you've got to be a little more concentrated and potentially not even, worry about run backs, right? Like last week said, hey, Washington is going to be challenged to score points. Mm-hmm. Remember the whole exercise? Remember, Eric? I wanted to bring this back up because we had remember we closed our eyes?
Yep.
Remember to close your eyes on Carson Wentz? And then it's like, yes. So that made me so happy. I got to tell you, from this show, when I'm watching the games or I'm looking at the scores, I'm like, oh man, that's a close your eyes, Carson.
Do you think he did have his eyes closed in the pocket for some of those plays?
One of the only things I got right last week was just jamming the Eagles defense in over and over and watching how many sacks did they have. It felt like every play, at least in the first half, it was just like you felt like when he dropped back to pass, he was going to get sacked. And you, at a certain point, it was like, I really appreciate these 1 point per every sack, but like let him throw because he's going to throw an interception. Like it was so bad. You got greedy. Like I need the pick 6. Okay. That's enough. That's enough of these, 8 sacks in the first half or whatever. But yeah, that was a good one. But like I said, kind of a weird week when Mac Hollins is the wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 1 or whatever. That makes for an interesting week. But let's get into the kind of keynote game I think everyone would probably agree the keynote game, piggybacking on Matt bringing up Lamar Jackson, and we have Bills and Ravens with a 51 total, which is actually kind of almost feels low given the how these two offenses have been so far this year. We do have maybe a smidge of weather I did just want to put out there before we really dive in, but I'm not sure that matters with these two quarterbacks. Again, as Matt said, premium running quarterbacks, high-powered offenses, high pass rate teams. The Bills threw 63 passes last week. And I don't know, other than, game theory, other than maybe the weather, it's very tough to get away from this game. Matt, get us started on this one.
I mean, you're going to want to be exposed to this game. What can I tell you? And this is one of those games. I mean, what we're talking about, like the hurricane, the remnants of the hurricane coming through. That's the issue, right?
Yep.
That's never good. You don't want high winds and rain. Like, that's not cool. Like, we don't want, especially the wind. You don't want that. So that is worth monitoring. It is setting up to be the game to fade. If you were going to fade a game, like, it's setting up to, like, hey, something weird happens in this game. The Ravens defense has been a good fantasy defense, even though they're allowing a lot of passing yards and fantasy points to quarterbacks and wide receivers. They have been a good fantasy defense. So they are making plays. They are getting turnovers. So that's interesting. The Bills, we know, are a smothering defense. So game theory wise, it sets up when there's one game and one game only that the two top quarterbacks are both facing off against each other. It makes sense. So I would ask Dario, do you think that might be an approach, and just say, hey, we have other games we like, and those totals aren't that far apart from this one, right? A few points. Mm-hmm. Maybe just fade it all together.
Right. I think we saw last week the Bills were able to keep the Dolphins off the field, right? They ran more than twice as many plays. And I think if that's your approach to facing Tua, that's like definitely going to be your approach to facing Lamar Jackson. So I think that's totally a concern that the Bills just slow this game down. And I mean, that's another reason to consider fading. I think the weather is a huge concern, but I probably can't bring myself to fade it. Like, Lamar Jackson's tear to start the season, and I think that the potential for the high winds just means that there's going to be more like short possession passing game, more running for the quarterbacks. We know that the Ravens don't have a running game outside of Lamar. So like his over-unders this week on rushing yards are like 57 or something already ridiculous. And even then I want to take the over. So I think that both these quarterbacks are obviously studs who are worth paying up for. And I think that more short targets, if there is indeed heavy wins, just means more targets for Diggs and Andrews, like the guys that those quarterbacks trust on these like 8 to 12 yard routes that I think are the guys that are, already target hogs in their offenses.
From a schematic standpoint, though, like Matt brought it up, do you have any concerns at all given the Bills still kind of injury riddled defense, right? Christian Benford is now out. I don't know what the status is of Dane Jackson. I had the injury report, I forget, but they're still pretty banged up. They might get a couple of guys back, but they also lost another guy or two last week to injury. However, they still play, this conservative style. Most people have probably seen it. They basically never blitz. They've blitzed 8 times in 3 games, which against Lamar is, you could die by 1,000 cuts, right? With him running and like you said, just Mark Andrews and 4 yards in a cloud of dust, like the Ravens historically have been willing to do when they do have J.K. Dobbins back. But can they, employ this approach and just like kind of keep everything in front of them and slow the game down? And they have been a little bit more of kind of a dink and dunk offense this year than they were in the past. Not crazy so, but teams are taking the approach to, we're going to make you check it down to Devin Singletary and Isaiah McKenzie and that, instead of letting Diggs and Gabe and those guys run down the field for 50-yard touchdowns. I love this game. I mean, I don't know how you cannot love this game, but I'm trying to figure out what the best way to approach it is in tournaments, like from an exposure perspective, because it is going to be, right? Diggs is going to be the go-to spend up, and we have the value to do it now. People will probably I mean, look how bad tight end is. So yeah, just give me Just give me Andrews and Diggs, even if I maybe don't even have one of those quarterbacks. And so is there any other way we can attack this game, or is it still just kind of wheels up on Diggs and Andrews, and then maybe figure out one of these other games we'll talk about to kind of get cute, if you will, around it?
I think my favorite pivot in this game is Isaiah Likely, actually. He's been out there on the field. I think he's totally in play. I think he's something like 4th on the team in routes behind Andrews, Bateman, and Duvernay. Like, he's very much on their target pecking order already. The production hasn't been there yet, which is why he's so cheap on both sides. And I think that he's a way that you can get really unique in this game. Pretty, like, unique and cheap. Like, I think I'll definitely have some Isaiah Likely lineups. He's going to have a big game one of these weeks. He's out there. He's on the field, and we saw what he can do in preseason.
Matt, who are you going after in this game?
I like Bateman again. Why not? Right?
Yep.
Bateman's the number one. Like, let's not forget about Bateman. Come on. Their cornerbacks are injured. Let's go. I mean, I will say, though, I'm on AccuWeather. Okay. 45-mile-an-hour wind gusts on Sunday. Right? It's when the remnants blow through, the eye blows through, the center of the storm blows through, then the wind comes back around. So there's going to be a lot of rain. I mean, a half an inch of rain on Saturday, another half an inch of rain on Sunday with these 30 to 45-mile-an-hour winds. I don't love it, guys. I mean,
I saw 20-mile-an-hour winds last I checked, but if it
no, that's
does
the
turn
average.
out to be, if it does turn out to be.
Yeah. The winds will be in the 20s, and then there will gusts up to 45 miles an hour. So that's the problem, right? So I do think that this is begging for, maybe some tempering of expectations in terms of the total number of points that are going to be scored. And that's why I love the Likely play, right? I love the Singletary play. I love yes, of course, we're not going to totally fade this game, but there's ways you can get exposure to the game and not necessarily, be all in. Like, I don't think this is a game stack game. I really don't. You're going to be one of everybody else is going to be game stacking the thing. And then the 40-mile-an-hour wins, or just variance, right? Or just game plan, or whatever, turnovers, all these things that can prevent offenses from actually scoring points that we think they're going to score.
I really like that. And I think I do still like Bateman, even in the 40-mile-an-hour gusts. I think he is the perfect example of a guy who is leverage on he's, like you said, he's the wide receiver one in, if we set aside the weather, by far the most exciting game of the week. And we're talking about a guy who's been fairly productive on 60 to 65% of the snaps. It's only going to go up over the course of the season, kind of like Matt said. And I think it was week 1, Bateman is only going to get more expensive. And we're kind of seeing that come to fruition, right? He's producing on a semi-limited snap share because they're kind of rotating all these guys, right? They're kind of a funky offense, but he's the guy. If it's not Andrews, it's Bateman in their offense.
Yeah. I mean, the air yards have gone down every week, right? He goes from a 70% snap share, 108 air yards, and then it's 85 air yards, and it's down to 70 air yards. But he's still getting 70 air yards at a minimum per week, right? He's still getting 6 targets per week. I mean, he's not getting 10 targets a week, but in any given week, especially if it's a shootout of any kind, it could easily pop up. Or the defense says, hey, okay, we just can't let Andrews beat us.
Right.
And then they create some sort of cover 3 offense or some sort of bracket coverage where it takes away the seam route. Okay. Right. Then it's all about Bateman. So there's going to be big Bateman weeks out there. And this would be a week for that, right? He's also very good after the catch. So he's not just an air yards guy. Like, he is very much like Keenan Allen in the way he plays. So he can't operate in the short intermediate areas and get yards after the catch. I mean, he's averaging, listen to this, 7.4 yards after the catch per target, which is one of the top in the league. I mean, he's not even a big air yards guy.
That was something I was going to say, is like, you watch any clips of Rashad Bateman with the ball in his hands after a catch, and it's like routinely 10 yards, makes 1 or 2 defenders miss. Like, it's really impressive. And I think that the Ravens would be mistaken not to, continue upping his volume, like we've said, because that's one thing that's been concerning so far is he's absolutely overperforming the volume he's seen and like his expected fantasy points profile. He's gotten kind of lucky on touchdowns, but he's just looked so good doing it that I think, we hope that if there's rational coaching, and the Ravens are a team that we like tend to see good coaching from, that they're going to give him the ball more and get him in situations that, just put him in a position to win.
What about a little Justice Hill dabble? Justice Hill?
He's looked good too. Outside of the one run, was it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, or whatever it was? He had the long run that he just like ran out of bounds, and he I'm not sure if he could have scored, but it could have been at least a long gain. And he showed the vision of the kid on the 6-year-old or whatever that's playing Little League for the first time. However, he has been the guy with Dobbins right in the back. It's almost just a straight up split between the two of them, and he has looked explosive.
He ran 13 routes. He had a 50% snap share. He had explosive runs. He doesn't cost anything. Mm-hmm. If we're doing like the likelies, I kind of like this idea. I like this strategy. I like this. Like, hey, we're fine. We're getting big exposure to this game with Likely and Singletary, Bateman and Hill. Yeah, it seems like we like more Ravens than we like Bills.
Which is interesting, right? Because the Bills now they're banged up, but the Bills have been the better defense for an extended period. I mean, before they got banged up this year, they were just elite, an absolute elite defense. And now I'm not so sure that they are. But the problem with the Bills is Diggs is the most expensive wide receiver on the slate by a good margin. I guess him and Devontae. Gabriel Davis, who I still like, and I think the wind is the big problem for Gabe. I think this would be the spot where we would probably, if it was sunny and 75 on Sunday and no wind, we would be like, okay, this is the time. Gabe's going to catch one of the long touchdowns. But he's the guy I think most impacted by this. McKenzie, whatever, it just gets a little hairy.
Is McKenzie whatever because he's basically supplanted Crowder.
Yep.
And if Gabe Davis is highly questionable, which he is, and this doesn't shape up to be a Gabe Davis week, if it is going to favor the short and intermediate route runners, this is another guy like Dawson Knox, another guy like it's like the cheaper options from this game. Sure, you can get exposure. Just don't devote your whole bankroll to this game. Just maybe little skinny stacking here and there.
Devin Singletary had 10 targets last week. I haven't seen people talking about that enough. I mean, it was definitely the way that the Dolphins defense was playing them. But like you said, Eric, the way that every defense has to approach the Bills now is just get your safeties real deep. Don't let Josh Allen beat you over the top. And last week, that just happened to lead to 10 Devin Singletary targets. And would you guys be surprised if we saw 6 or 7 Devin Singletary targets this week? I don't think I would.
6 or 7 Dawson Knox targets. Also very possible.
Play.
Yep. I think to put a bow on this one, I think it's one where I want to get to Sunday, right? We're recording this on a Friday. We'll see. Weather can change and all of that. And if the field is like going to go completely off of this game, kind of like we're talking about because of the weather, maybe I'll sprinkle a couple more of the premium stacks in than we're already planning here. But if everybody's still going to be like, it's 20-mile-an-hour winds, it's Josh Allen, it's Lamar Jackson, Stephon Diggs, I'm not worried. I do think I want to be a little bit more on the other side. The only thing I was also going to say on McKenzie, I do like him maybe a little bit more. I think it's not that they've come out and said this. What I think is kind of becoming the case is when they're playing a little bit more of an aggressive man style defense, McKenzie is, Crowder's a fine player. McKenzie is an explosive dude. And he can run away from the defense and when they get the ball in his hands. And so the Ravens, remember the Ravens game against Burrow and Chase and Higgins and everything last year where they don't care who's back there at corner, who's like, they're going to bring pressure. They're going to play man. They're going to do their thing on defense. And I think that leads itself to McKenzie more than Crowder. And then if we have the wind element, like we're talking about, maybe it is just a lot more McKenzie. So I think he's a little more interesting than I probably said.
Yeah, a little McKenzie, a little Bateman is only what 2.3% owned on DraftKings, 3.6 on Fanduel. So, yeah, I mean, there's no ownership on Bateman.
Criminally
right now.
low there.
Yeah,
and then another thing I just want to say about the Ravens secondary is like, when was the last time Devontae Parker had a good game before last week? And but the whole reason we were even excited about Dolphins and Ravens 2 weeks ago, we were like, hey, that Ravens secondary's pretty sus. Like, it's Tyreek and Waddle, and then what do you know? They each scored 40 points. Like, I think maybe we're just like getting a little bit too cute. And like you said, if the field does pivot off this game, like, I wouldn't be surprised to see another 30 burger for Diggs here, just the way that the Ravens secondary has been.
I think it's a good one to monitor over these next couple of days. Maybe the most important thing to monitor over these next couple of days, because as we get into these next couple of games, I do think we have a pretty good idea of where the field is going to be going. The next one up on the list is hilarious.
Well, no, one thing that's important. Okay, he's first of all, he has the highest ownership because his salary is lower relative on FanDuel. So he has the number one ownership, right? 22%. He's the highest owned, projected to be on per Chris Jimino on RotoGrinders. Okay, so it's a much better idea to just auto fade the chalkiest wide receiver than the chalkiest running back. Oftentimes you can get really in trouble fading the chalkiest running back. It's almost never a bad idea because wide receiver production, if we take a step back, wide receiver production is so volatile week to week, right? It is so volatile week to week. Even Justin Jefferson, everyone's like, shock, what's wrong with Justin Jefferson? Hey, guys, he's a wide receiver. It happens. Game plan, right? Random events. The guy only has a few instances every game, let's say more than a few for him, 10, where he can actually make a play and score fantasy points. Sometimes it doesn't happen that week for whatever reason, right? Pass tip to the line of scrimmage, all these things, right? It's just wide receiver production week to week is so volatile, and their projections are much more fragile than running backs. So in general, whenever I see the most expensive wide receiver being the number one most rostered, it becomes an easy fade on principle, regardless of the weather.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think, and we'll get to. There are quite a few wide receivers that I do like. Running back is becoming very difficult. It's becoming very when we can't even play Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor and all these guys anymore. Running back is becoming difficult. A running back who everyone is definitely going to flock to is in our next game, the Seahawks and the Lions, which is kind of funny that again, one of those things. If you would have asked me a month ago, the next two games actually on this list are these ones you're excited to talk about, I would have said you're absolutely effing crazy. But here we are with the 47.5 total Seahawks Lions. The most interesting part is the Lions' health. So Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift are both out, which propels Jamal Williams into that chalk territory at running back that Matt was talking about.
Chalk.
I think it's interesting though, because you get look, the Seahawks are a pristine matchup. That defense stinks. You're not going to get me to say anything positive about them. But when we get an offense like the Lions, that's a good offense at full strength. But we just removed the best two players. Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift are part of why the offense is so good. And everyone's going to flock to these guys, right? Jamal Williams going to be super popular. TJ Hawkinson currently projects to be popular. DJ Chark, maybe some Josh Reynolds. These guys are all going to get ownership. And it's like, man, if two teams just ran the ball down each other's throats in like the quickest game of Sunday, would I be surprised? And there really wasn't anybody I wanted in tournaments? No, but I also see the value. Dario, how do we like handle this one, particularly with all the Lions injuries?
I mean, call me crazy, but I think the Geno double stack is very, very in play. The Lions DBs haven't exactly stopped anyone this year. What was that?
Now we're talking.
Yeah. And I mean, in case anyone forgot, DK Metcalf had 3 touchdowns when these teams played each other last year in week 17. So they also combined for 80 points, by the way. So there's huge potential for juice here. I think, Geno double stacking with Metcalf and Lockett. I'm fading Noah Fant and Will Dissly because they're basically splitting a already near worthless role.
Yep.
And then I think Hawkinson, we've talked in the last few weeks about how we're losing hope for him. And this now with Amon-Ra St. Brown out, it's like it really has to like test our will on our on how hard we want to fade Hawkinson, because in theory he should absorb those short targets. And it's just like I will probably play a little bit of him. I think I'll be below the field, but in theory, everything we think we know about football says that TJ Hawkinson should see a good amount of targets this week, but
he should, but he's always questionable.
Always. Yep.
I mean, it's really just a Q tag. He's TJ Q tag. That's really what he is. I mean,
or he's TQ Hawkinson.
He's TQ. Yeah, he's TQ, man. Why? Why is it always, and it's always something different. Like it was a hip. And I'm like, oh, I thought it was a hamstring. No, it was an ankle. No. And then I look up and it's like, no, this time it's a foot. Oh, you never know. It's just like you put your hand in there and it's like one of those mystery boxes, right? And you're like, what are we pulling out here? Oh, ribs. Got it. Shoulder. Okay. Good for you, TJ.
TJ injury charades. That's what it is.
It's just,
you have to
I
act
don't
out
know,
the
man.
injury
I mean,
this week.
It's going to be the reminder is that ownership on a single player doesn't matter as much as the overall ownership on your lineup. So as long as you're getting variance other places, as long as you're going low owned other places and playing some, Bateman and some, dart throws on the Justice Hills and these kinds of guys, then you can play Jamal Williams. Go right ahead. Right. So much more likely to play Jamal Williams this week than Stephon Diggs. If it turns out, again, we have no idea what's going to happen with the weather and how ownership is going to shift. But if Stephon Diggs turns out to be the number one, then it's going to be an easy fade, like I said. But this is the creative game. Can we just get some stats on Geno Smith? I mean, good for Geno Smith. This guy endured a lot, right? His time in New York was not fun. He was belittled and embarrassed and still has a very cool attitude about the whole thing, which is what I love, right? He's been pressured a lot this year, but when he hasn't pressured, can you guess what his completion percentage is with a clean pocket right now when he's not pressured? Guess.
I'm going to guess 82%, only because I know his completion percentage on the whole is somewhere in the upper 70s.
I was going to say 85. Yep.
It's exactly 85. Eric's right. Ding, ding, ding. Eric, woo! Nice job, buddy. Good job. That's it, right on the nose. He must have, I don't know if he was just this idea of a computer in front of, I don't know. On play action, 88.5, right? True completion percentage, like when you factor out drops and throwaways, 80%, right? So if he's throwing accurately and he's throwing to one of the best wide receiver duos in the league, you have to take him seriously, especially if they're going up against the Lions, who do not kick, who play fast. It's he becomes very interesting. I mean, we very rarely scroll down that far in the quarterback pool to find a guy like this. But when it's the Lions, I'm in. I mean, 5.4K on DraftKings and going up against a team that allows a lot of scoring from the quarterback position. Giddy up, dude. Giddy up.
I also like guys like him and stacks like this, honestly, again, I don't want to keep talking about the weather, but if we set aside that weather in that game, how do you get the upside of the Bills-Ravens game with kind of the upside of another kind of stack like this? I can go down to that $5,000 quarterback with Lockett, Metcalf, maybe both. Bring it back with Jamal Williams or Chark or Hawkinson or Josh Reynolds. Whatever.
No, don't laugh at Josh Reynolds, bro.
I'm not. I'm
dude,
just
you laugh
out
at Isaiah McKenzie. I'm like the laugh police over here. I love to laugh.
It's week 4 and we're already talking about Josh Reynolds. Like that's for like point. Thanksgiving
that's
Day.
A great point. That is a great point. Yes, yes. It's already Josh Reynolds week. It's already what is it? It's still in September.
I know it's still nice outside.
It's so true.
It wasn't meant to knock Josh Reynolds. He actually looked really good, by the way. I kind of can't
look good last year.
I know he looks really good. He's better than TJ Hawkinson. I'll tell you. I'm taking TJ Hawkinson is going to catch 2 touchdowns because I'm dunking on him now, but he's not good at football. But you have this cheap stack that is, we're talking about how much upside it has. Both defenses stink. Geno's looking good. The Lions offense is good. And now if I want to get those premium guys, I can afford them too. I mean, I'm sacrificing the quarterback. I'm sacrificing maybe a little bit of raw points. But again, like Matt was outlining with the wide receiver, if it just so happens that Josh Allen and those guys score 30 and Geno gets 25, you win. He's $3,000 cheaper. You can get the points through Diggs, Andrews, Davis, Bateman, whatever, Singletary. You can get the points through those guys and get another kind of premium stack. So I really like, honestly, these next couple of games for that purpose. So one question I have, Dario, that you have to answer for me is Lockett or Metcalf, if I have to pick one.
This is actually something I was messaging with Cody Carpentier, our head football analyst. I was talking to him on Slack. I was like, how do you see Metcalf and Lockett's matchups? Because I think that's a very big thing to play out this week. And it sounds like, there's no real hardcore shadow corners in the NFL these days anymore. You don't have anyone following them around. It seems like Metcalf does still have a slightly more favorable matchup where they might use Jeff Okudah to completely wipe out Tyler Lockett and then have a little safety help over Metcalf. And I think that DK Metcalf's route tree has really changed this year in terms of where he's being targeted. Last year, we know he led the league in unrealized air yards because of the nature of Russell Wilson. Let me just chuck it to DK Metcalf. And this year they're using him much more as a possession receiver. So if he's on the lesser of the Lions 2 corners because they're putting safety help over the top and then trying to isolate, Okudah on Lockett, and then Metcalf can beat, win on those short routes, get those accurate throws from Geno Smith. I think that it's worth paying up for DK this week.
I like it.
Yeah, Matt, here's the thing. We talked about the game that Vegas is getting wrong. Well, this is it. What do we love? Offenses that are better than the defenses, right? So we have 2 offenses facing off with defenses that are measurably worse than the offenses. So that's the perfect comment. And it doesn't much matter that it's DeAndre Swift being out versus Craig Reynolds. Sadly, based on, expected points added and all the analytics around the running back position, it's not going to affect the game outcome, whether it's Swift or Reynolds. As much as fantasy gamers, it feels crazy to say that. Amon-Ra is a big deal, though. I mean, Amon-Ra, he materially impacts scoring, having him on the field or not. So that is going to be a problem, but I think Vegas maybe overvalues that, or maybe just the brand and the public perception of Geno Smith and the Seahawks and the Lions is what's holding this total down, right? I think that a rational view of this game, knowing it's at Ford Field, it's not even in Seattle, right, where there could be some conditions. It's outside. We're talking about, this is a Lions home game. This should be a 50-point total. It absolutely should be, where there should be a little bit more of a debate between, okay, this game versus the other game. I actually think that I'd be so much more comfortable given the salaries and just the weapons that you have, where DK is healthy and Lockett's healthy and Josh Reynolds is underrated and Jamal Williams is probably going to have a day, everybody. And if he doesn't have a day in tournaments, if he gets injured in the first quarter, it's going to be Craig Reynolds going nuclear, right? Nuclear. So you got to have some Craig Reynolds just on that, just in case there's a first half injury.
And he's going to play
anyway. He's going to be out there probably running more routes than Jamal Williams.
Yep.
Yeah, he's going to be running more routes than Jamal Williams this week. But if Jamal goes down at some point and then he gets the second half touchdowns, that's how you get a week winning guy. So he's ready and teed up to go into basically take the 40% opportunity share from DeAndre Swift's 60% opportunity share, and then 20% of that siphoned over to Jamal Williams. So I don't think a third running back. I know Justin Jackson's going to be active.
Yeah.
I don't see much of a role for him because Craig Reynolds does the things that Justin Jackson can do,
Right.
but better than Justin Jackson, and he's a little bit bigger. So I don't see much of a case for Justin Jackson getting many touches at all. More of a case for, hey, dabble with some Reynolds in your game stacks. So there's just so many places to save salary where you're stacking
Both Reynolds.
5 dudes from this game.
Both Reynolds, double the double
All the
Reynolds.
You could
Double
double
Reynolds
up the Reynolds.
stack.
Yes. And then you get some premium talent too, right? You get some premium, you get some free square wide receiver in one Reynolds. You have Jamal's another free square. You've got a total dark horse running back that you can sneak in there. Then you've got 2 really talented wide receivers that we all love playing in GPPs like for the last 3 years.
Yep.
On the other side of the game. Come on. You just don't. I just don't like the tight ends. I love that we're more like going to do that, and then we're going to dabble in like likely at tight end. So we're going to get we'll get our Bills Ravens exposure, but it may be by dabbling there and concentrating attention on this game in particular. I like this game a lot, and then it's also got the weird line, the 3.5, where it's like, hey guys, line's 3.5. Take the Seahawks. You might as well. The Lions are all beat up, right?
They're definitely trying to coax the people into the Seahawks.
Yeah,
now
come on, people.
Yeah.
Take the Seahawks. The Lions, they're not that good. They're the Lions. Because it could be, it still could be a Lions go ham in this game, right? That's still very possible. They've been the offense has been great, and just because there's no St. Brown doesn't mean that they're just going to stop producing.
In that hypothetical scenario, I'm gonna steal a move from Matt here, but close your eyes and Khalif Raymond runs a 4.39 40.
There's the other guy.
There's
the other guy.
There's
another free square.
He's gonna be running routes this week, and he has a pretty solid target rate over the last 3 years. He's 17% on a tiny sample this year, 16% last year.
He's this week's Matt Collins. I said it.
Oh, there we go.
He very well could be.
One of these 2 guys, Reynolds or Raymond, is this week's Matt Collins.
I had to put his name out there. I think.
Thank God you did.
I'll be throwing a dart or 2 on Raymond. He's kind of like my Isaiah Likely level deep pivot for this game.
Yeah, just go deep, man. Look deep into your heart, right? And find the guy that's the guy behind the guy, and also play him a little bit. When the top dudes are out, the top 2, they command such attention, and they have such a center of gravity to them, especially with touch gravity, where you remove St. Brown, you remove Swift, the number of vacated opportunities from week to week is just enormous, and you just don't know how that void's going to be filled exactly. So just bet on all these different combinations, dude.
That's what I was going to say. Remember, it was actually the Lions, and I feel like it's going to be the Lions a lot this year, which I think we mentioned in that show too. But when we had the Washington and Lions game, our general thesis was you need to load up on this game. It doesn't mean you have to play Wentz or you have to play Goff, but we basically said if you're playing 150 teams, I would put 150 versions of this stack into your, skinny stacks, full game stacks. This game is, I think, the Seahawks Lions game is more of a crux of this slate even than the Ravens and Bills game is. But it's because,
and it's heartbreaking too that the weather might bail everybody out on this.
I know.
And they pivot to this game when we were like, please don't rain, please wind die down, preserve our zig versus zag game of the week, and don't let everybody pile into it. Right, just because of the weather.
I do think there are enough options on both sides that you can mix and match your way through. Again, it was kind of like the Washington thing. They had 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and a running back that you could play. Detroit back then still had Amon-Ra and had Swift and had all these guys that you could cycle through and just rotate all those pairings. I mean, Seattle, we haven't talked about Rashad Penny. Dario mentioned the game last year when there was 80 points. You know who the superstar of that game was besides Amon-Ra? Rashad Penny. He's 49. He's sub 5K on DraftKings.
Oh my God, we forgot about Penny. He's still there.
There's all these guys.
There. He's a guy that's there.
there's all these, and he's good at the game. The Seattle run game is not good at the game, but Rashad Penny is good at the game. And so you just have, right, you can get access to this game with Josh Reynolds and Rashad Penny secondary stacks. And nobody's doing that. You want to do Khalif Raymond, you want to do your Tyler Lockett and Craig Reynolds, right? There's so many ways to go about this game that I think it's just such an awesome tournament game, but over kind of a portfolio. I'll be honest, if I had to pick, I don't know yet. Like you said, give me one guy from each side. I don't know who I'm picking. We can probably wrap up with that. If you guys had to pick one Lion, one Seahawk, who would that be? But my take is that I kind of want all of them.
Yeah, I would go if I had to pick one and one, I would just go the wide receivers, Metcalf and Reynolds. I think that's or if you feel like you're getting some fringy guys elsewhere, then just Metcalf and Williams. No, don't overthink it too much. The one thing I'll say about Rashad Penny is, remember, he has 30-point upside that he showed last year. Okay, he had I think a stretch of 5 games where 3 of those games he had 25 fantasy points or more on the same team. This is a Seahawks team, right? And now again, it was like Houston. I know the matchups weren't great. Detroit, but that's what he did against Detroit last year. They played Detroit week 17. He put up 32.5 fantasy points. He had 185 total yards. Followed that up against Arizona the next week with 190 total yards. This is why he's a little more owned on DraftKings. I think he's top 15 in ownership among running backs on DraftKings this week. But he's priced up on Fanduel. So the game theorists would actually say play more Penny on Fanduel, where the salary is going to chase people off him, but he has the upside to justify that salary regardless.
Yeah, that comment right there from Chase, exactly what I was thinking there with my pick. What I was going to say, I think it's just Metcalf and Chark, because I think I said this on my show that I do, which is First Mover. It's like the early look at DFS slate on Mondays. And I said, in the games, imagine the scenario where DJ Chark hits, and imagine the scenario where Josh Reynolds hits.
Yes.
And DJ Chark's hit is far more nuclear. So I think that
then
he's
Reynolds
still the receiver.
That Reynolds in cash, then that's fine.
There you go.
That's fine.
There you go.
That's fine. I have to admit, I'm a little bit skittish on Chark because he burned me all year. But his ownership's way down. So I didn't know. I kind of imagined his ownership being much higher because of the matchup and the injury. It may bump the next time that they get synced up. The ownership numbers get synced up, but as long as they stay under 5, yeah, baby.
He's cheaper than Josh Reynolds on FanDuel this week.
What?
In case you guys weren't
aware. He is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
That's crazy. I mean, they're fairly close on DraftKings. All right,
he's been 5K on DraftKings all year. I mean, that's been what he is.
Let's hit another game that's very similar. Not in quite the plethora of options, but that again, a month ago, I would have said, Dario, you want to talk about Browns Falcons? Are you sure about this? But again, 47.5 total. Jacoby Brissett and Geno Smith must have both went and got baptized at the same place this offseason, because they're both playing out of their minds. Marcus Mariota, also in this game, has looked really good to me. Still running, had a rushing touchdown last week, maybe not the yards. The Falcons averaged 7.5 points per yards per play against the Seahawks. If that tells you anything about what the Lions are going to do.
Wow.
The Falcons are just lighting up that Seahawks defense, and the Browns have been a little susceptible in the air, and it's only 2 dudes on the Falcons in the air, Kyle Pitts and Drake London, and the Browns have maybe 1 or 2 more options, but I think it's an appealing game where, again, it's cheap. Both quarterbacks are cheap. Kind of all the receivers and tight ends are at least reasonably priced, not expensive. Nick Chubb is kind of expensive, who maybe we'll obviously have to talk about, but there's not that many options, right? It's only, if it's going to be scoring, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, maybe CPAT, and then Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, David Njoku, right? There's only a couple of options generally on each side, which makes for good game stacks. What do you think, Dario?
Yeah, I was going to say, I checked Njoku's projected ownership last night, and I was shocked at how low it was. I think it was in the 2 to 3% range. He's still very underpriced for his target volume that he's getting. I mean, he broke out in a primetime game. Usually when you see a breakout that people are forgetting about, it's like because it was a Sunday at 10 a.m. But he broke out in a primetime game, and it seems like people have already forgotten. So I think David Njoku is very live this week. And then I think Kareem Hunt, his opportunity share hasn't gone down over the course of like weeks 2 and 3. We saw him get the 2 touchdowns in week 1. Everyone was like, oh man, like, should we have faded Nick Chubb? And then Nick Chubb has gotten the touchdowns of late, but Kareem Hunt is still getting the red zone opportunities. He's still getting the targets. He's still getting his 10 to 12 carries a game. It's a very run heavy team nonetheless. And I think Kareem Hunt is a very solid pivot in this game.
I like it. Matt, who are your kind of favorite guys in this one? I
like Hunt, dude. I like these secondary guys where, especially in a tournament setting, so many, you see all the Q tags and all these guys going down. We saw last week with DeAndre Swift, and then there goes Jamal Williams, right? Yep. So that's all the more of a case for scenarios that unfold in the normal football game. There's Kareem Hunt, and he can do it without an injury. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. If there is an injury, then it's 3 touchdowns are in his range of outcomes, but he seems to get 2 touchdowns regularly.
Yeah,
which is pretty amazing. It's not like he's still the 1B. He's not the touch leader by any means, but it doesn't. They're so run heavy that I have to agree with that. I love and I also love it. Yeah, I love Njoku too. I mean, the thing with Njoku is the salary did reset, right? Because it happened in the Thursday night game. So now he's up at 3.7K. He's now in that Dawson Knox Schultz zone, but he's still below those guys. And I think we can, even though they're both questionable, I think that David Njoku has more upside week in, week out than TJ Hawkinson, for example.
Oh, and so, Njoku's questionable tag was just a rest day. Like, I think he
got removed from the injury.
It was a knee injury, but they've already removed the injury designation.
Right,
like,
right.
He's not. I don't believe
got
he's
the green
really
light for Sunday. I saw that this morning. So.
I don't think he's banged up the way Hawkinson is. So I think Njoku is probably the play of the week in terms of tournaments at the tight end position. And Cordarrelle Patterson. I mean, the guy looks awesome. Yep. So I mean, he's got a knee injury. Is he actually questionable, or is that he did return to practice on Friday? So it looks like he's going to play.
I assume
I don't know. Missing practice on Wednesday and Thursday makes me nervous with anyone. I think so. I'd say it's pretty much. I'm looking at it as like a legit questionable for him. But I think that even if he does play, they might hold him back, which could mean more targets toward Pitts in London. And then especially if he misses the game, I mean, like, jam Pitts in London like all day, because the Cordarrelle Patterson's target share is legit, and that's going to open some things up if he doesn't go.
I view kind of Pitts in London like a lesser Metcalf, Lockett, like we just talked about. Like, those are the 2 guys in the passing game on that side of the foot. Like, you want to play Hunt, you want to play Chubb, maybe you want to play Njoku or Amari or whatever that you want to do from the Brown side. You have these 2 options that's the passing game, dude. Like, Bryan Edwards isn't even active anymore on game days. So sorry to tell you, Olamide Zaccheaus is not going to be earning a bunch of volume, right? And they don't. Mariota's not throwing a ton to the backs. It's just those 2 dudes. So again, I really like this game probably a little bit more for secondaries, but I think you can play Mariota and Brissett both in tournaments, kind of like Geno. I think
Brissett too.
I think you can play Brissett. See, here's my crazy. You're talking about running backs. Okay, if this running back goes down or something like that, here's my Jacoby Brissett, the QB sneak god. Is what he is. He's going to have a game this year where he throws for 250 and 2 and has 2 QB sneak touchdowns. Mm-hmm. He's going to pull the Tom Brady or whatever. The guy's the best QB sneaker in the league. It's going to happen.
10 yards rushing in every single game this year.
It's going to happen. He's going to do something. And I just think it's one of those. I'm not sure he has the upside of Mariota and Geno Smith, but he's got a great matchup. He's got good weapons. If he just happens, right? If they scored 35 points and he happens to have 4 of the touchdowns, that's just kind of touchdown luck.
Can we just acknowledge the sentence of the upside of Mariota and Geno Smith? Because that is not something I don't think any of us thought we'd hear on a DFS show.
The thing
this
is,
season.
Mariota's been hurting himself. He's been stalling a lot of these drives out. He's been fumbling every game, and he has like 3 interceptions in 3 games. So he's going to have one of these games where he has a pretty clean sheet, in the turnover department. And that means a lot more of these drives can be sustained. And that means that there's fewer back and forth and more scoring. And that's how you could boom the upside a little bit with Mariota, because we know that he certainly has he's got at least 6 rushing attempts in every single game. He has the ability, he has the athleticism to go for 70 like he did in against New Orleans in week 1. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, Mariota, Geno Smith, those are the salary savers I like. And Pitts this week, 5K. Yep. I mean, he was a little bit less last week. It's bumped a little bit, but it's still, I mean, Kyle Pitts, 5K. Yes, please. So
we were close. We were real. Last week was close on Kyle Pitts. He had Mariota missed him for probably a 60-yard touchdown on the first drive, I think it was.
Have a day, dude.
And then
he's gonna have a day.
He got open. Finally got
tackled inside
target.
the 5 one play too. Yeah.
Yep. And drew a holding in the end zone. It's coming. It's coming for.
You got to distribute it around. You got to distribute it to Njoku. You got to give some Goddard always from Goddard in there. Feel free to fade Hawkinson. Pitts, Andrews. I mean, just you mix it around. And there wasn't there one super inexpensive tight end on the slate this week that we were talking about? Oh, Likely. Bingo. Yeah. There you go. I think that's a nice little. That's maybe one other guy that's super cheap, Tunyon. Given that his target volume's going up and they don't have any receivers, but that would be maybe the tight end mixture. It's you got to make sure that you're not concentrating on any given tight end. Like you don't want to be like, hey, I'm betting this is the week for Pitts. Like just I know that's going to be the last couple of weeks has been a real temptation to just I know this is the week for Pitts. I know it. I'm just gonna go all in. I want to. You don't need to. But if you want him to be your most exposed tight end this week, I'm in on that. London looks amazing. This is another one of those games, I guess. What did we say the total is?
47.5.
Yeah. It's at Atlanta. See, that's the thing. It's like, I would think that was just like the last one. I'm like, okay, if that's in Seattle, it makes sense, right? This is in Cleveland. Okay, 47. Cool. Seems low for these two teams, the way they're playing in Atlanta. Seems low.
I like it. The you segueing into one of our last games, one of the tight ends that you mentioned in Jacksonville at Philly this week, not in one of the nice domes, but we do have a 45.5 total. And the Jaguars have been quite this pleasant surprise so far. I'm a little worried it's a smidge fraudulent given who they've played so far. I'm not particularly worried about that the Eagles are fraudulent, but I do think this could be the fun game where the Jags are just good enough on offense to push the Eagles a little bit. The Eagles have been solidly multiple percentage points pass rate over expectation, despite the fact they're kicking the shit out of everybody. They're up 24 points in the second half, still 5% over pass rate over expected. Jalen Hurts looks awesome. Devonta Smith showed everybody why he won the Heisman last week, and he's not expensive at all, and he's not owned either. A.J. Brown is A.J. Brown. Dallas Goedert. It feels like the Eagles, to me, are just, especially in these matchups, maybe there will come a week where we're not talking about the Eagles, but the Jaguars' defense is not good enough, in my opinion. I know they've had a couple good games. It's not good enough to not have Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown,
repeat,
Devonta Smith. Yeah.
Rinse, repeat. What do you say? Rinse, repeat. Probably not going to be a Devonta Smith week. Like he seems like an oscillator to me, right? Where it's going to be this week or not next week, then next week, then the next week, then not this week, then next week. Always AJ Brown, always Jalen Hurts. We're saving all this money. Right, we're going to play
True.
all these cheap Lions, and we're going to, why not? Cheap Seahawks even. You're going to spend somewhere. Spend it on A.J. Brown against the Jaguars, right? I mean, that seems like if it were 3 weeks ago, if I said that, you'd be like, yeah, exactly. Crazy.
Yep.
Yeah, so chalky, yeah. And it's like, no, now it's different. That's a different Jaguar. Now, they are playing great. They've been a revelation. Their defense looks great, but it's okay to be skeptical and just let them beat Philly. Okay, I know that let them beat the Chargers. Okay, they did it. Okay, fine, right? But with no Keenan Allen, it was just Justin Herbert was not himself. No,
Lindsley and Slater
this
hurt.
Game, yeah, losing Slater.
Bosa too.
Bosa, right? Good call.
It was
the Chargers injury woes. Oh, geez.
I mean, the Chargers
cursed every year.
Eagles are healthy. They're the best team in the NFC.
Yeah.
Show me you can do it against the Eagles. Just show it to me. Just show it to me. Just show it to me. So again, that's what we said. We said make or break week for ETN. Like ETN, we're gonna find out what he is. No. This week we'll find out.
Because we thought they were going to be in a bad game script last week, and then
it's this week they're going to be down. This week he's going to run.
The Jaguars are just going to keep winning, and we'll never see ETN's upside.
Yeah, exactly.
So yes, we have to play ETN this week. You have to play ETN in tournaments. You got to do it.
So Dario, is ETN then the bring back to our Eagles stacks, or this one is trickier to me. So this is where I definitely need you guys' help. Christian Kirk has been popping. Zay Jones is getting obviously a boatload of targets. Our god awful projections right now. I don't mean that they're awful. I mean it makes me sick that Evan Ingram kind of pops from a point per dollar perspective, and then you have ETN. But if the Eagles are going to go hang 40 on somebody, I think somebody on the Jags are competent enough, even in a bad matchup, to do something. Is it ETN? Do you like the wide receivers? What do you think?
I mean, for me, it's just Christian Kirk, especially because Zay Jones is questionable to play.
I don't think he's going to play, actually.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like he got sort of re-injured on Thursday. It kind of took a weird turn midweek. Sounds like getting worse. But I think if he doesn't play, that makes things worse for Kirk, because then he's the only credible threat in their passing game. But if Zay Jones is out there and they have to respect him, then I definitely like the spot for Kirk. But Christian Kirk has just been a total stud this year in terms of earning targets, being used in the red zone in a smart way by Doug Peterson. So I think that if someone's if the Eagles are going to be way out ahead and the Jaguars will be chasing them, I think for me, even though he's the most expensive piece of the offense, it's Christian Kirk.
So last thing on this, we just got, I don't think this changes a lot, but it's at least interesting that I think we should bring up, because we just, as we're speaking, got news. Boston Scott is out. And so Miles Sanders has already been getting a very large percentage of that work. I do think we would prefer to attack through the air against the Jags. But if it's now down from that 3-man backfield to the 2-man backfield, and we were seeing the most, I've played Miles Sanders basically every week this year, right? And at least some teams. And he mostly looks good. He's even catching the ball a little bit. He's getting, 60 to 70% of the backfield work. And then they get down to the red zone, and in comes Boston Scott, right? We got to do the Boston Scott's the new Jordan Howard. Yeah, I know he was on the team last year, but it's Miles isn't allowed to score touchdowns. If he's out, and it is a little bit expensive, maybe we want that Bills-Ravens game on a team, right? So that's where we used our salary. Can we pivot from maybe one of the chalky running backs to a Miles Sanders without Boston Scott?
I think so. I think the 3-man to the 2-man. Also, I mean, if you're projecting that maybe the Jaguars make this more of a game than everyone thinks, and this is kind of, pass heavy on both sides, Kenny Gainwell's going to see more snaps, and Kenny Gainwell's going to see targets too. I think that
you don't know what they're going to do. They tricked us last year every week.
Every time.
Distribution. So that's
Trey Sermon, 2 touchdowns incoming.
Oh God, yeah. Yes, here comes Trey Sermon. I just wanted to bring it up as kind of the last little guy. Not like you said.
Well, what's Gainwell's price? Gainwell's super cheap. He's 4.9K. I guess he's not super cheap.
Same price as Rashad Penny. a few
He's
$100
price as
less than
Rashad Penny.
ETN.
God damn it. He's not. All right.
I think you want I know this guy didn't pan out, but the week 1 Amir Abdullah, the 4K flat, catch some passes, maybe get into the end zone and get me my 16 points and get out of Dodge. And like, you can win with that guy. But just the closer he gets to the Jamal Williams, to the Khalil Herberts, right? These guys that are just project for so many more points, it becomes more difficult. The game, Dario said this right before we got on. I'm also just incredibly fascinated by this last game. I think somebody in the chat even mentioned this was their favorite game, but Broncos Raiders. Everyone has written off the Broncos, and frankly, everyone's probably written off the Raiders too, because they kind of stink. And now we're even getting Josh McDaniels cheating videos coming out on the internet, and all kinds of chaos going on in the AFC West. The market, though, all of our opponents, we're done with the Broncos. That's it. Russ is cooked. Russ doesn't need to cook. He is cooked.
Yeah.
It's over for Russ, right? That's what everybody thinks. We can't play $5,500 Jerry Jeudy. We can't play Cortland Sutton, blah, blah, blah. But this game sets up for me really well for tournaments where we've kind of talked about this. It's so consolidated, especially on the Denver side, but honestly on both sides. It's so consolidated that if Russ can bounce back at all and be old Russ, I mean, it's just wheels up. Like, if you were able to get Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf stacks back in the day at these prices, you know, with Russ, we would just be talking about how much to play, not if to play it. And so pretty interested in what you guys think about this game. Matt, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
What's up with the 45-point total in this game? What do they know?
The secret sauce is telling Vegas that the Broncos have a damn good secondary, and it looks like they do. I think that's the scary aspect of it for me, is like, I don't know if I'm stacking Carr because of how good this Broncos secondary has been.
You're not playing Carr this week. You're not playing Carr this week.
You play Russ in this one, right?
This is a Russ game. This is all Russ, baby. Oh yeah.
But are you worried, Dario? Are you worried?
Dude, where's my car? Kind of weak.
Yeah. Aren't you worried?
Yeah,
yes, I'm always worried.
That worries me. Like,
the Raiders.
I mean, look at how the Broncos have won the games that they've won this season, right? It's like they haven't needed anything from their offense, because in their 2 wins, like, they gave up 10 points to San Francisco and 16 points to Houston. So, I mean, I think your part of the play here is Russ is like overdue for some touchdown regression. Same goes for Cortland Sutton. Like, they've just run extremely bad in the red zone. And maybe that's because Nathaniel Hackett is actually a terrible coach and they'll just be this way all year. But I think that they're due for some positive regression. And yeah, you play Russ, stack him with Sutton, and then bring it back with, I mean, like, Mac Hollins rerun. If Hunter Renfro's out again, do we do that?
Yeah, that's the issue, right? You don't really want to play anyone on the Raiders. It's possible this defense is good enough. Like last week, we said, hey, you don't need to run back with Jalen Hurts. You can just do some Russ stacks and call it a day. You don't necessarily need to go there. It's certainly possible. Hunter Renfrow misses again. Devontae Adams is going to have a week against the secondary. But isn't he a secondary beater? Weren't there weeks where you're just like, hey, I'm not worried about Devontae Adams and who he's matched up against? What? What am I worried about this for? Why would I worry about this?
It's like week 1 Jefferson against Jair, right? Everybody was like, oh, aren't you worried about Justin Jefferson? He's got a tough matchup with Jair Alexander. And then he had 40 fantasy points in the first half. You know, it's like sometimes these guys. One of my favorite quotes, I can't remember who said this, so I apologize to whoever I'm quoting without citing you, but it said, everybody always talks about the wide receivers that have my dogs are also excited for this quote. The wide receivers having a tough matchup, but so does that corner. That corner has a really tough matchup too with that superstar wide receiver, and no one ever talks about that, especially with Devontae.
Yeah, he's also used in the red zone, right? Heavily. He's like he was the go-to player on the 1-yard line last year.
Right. So he's got a touchdown in every game this year. It's just a matter of
2 touchdowns. He doesn't have to get 100 yards as long as he gets 80 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
It's no problem. It's easy.
So one thing I was going to bring up is can we play Darren Waller it doesn't look gross. I know that the number, nothing looks great about his role, anything like that. But when I can't think of like, Devontae's really expensive. Do I really want to do Mac Hollins? Do I really want to do any of the running backs in the committee? Not really. You do have a really talented tight end for a reasonable price as a bring back, and it's just kind of a positional thing. Can we play Darren Waller at all?
I wouldn't mind sprinkling him in, but I think that the target share has been a little concerning. Like, we moved him, back down in the rest of season ranks just because he hasn't been commanding targets the way he has in years past, and we knew this was bound to happen because of Devontae Adams entering their offense. But you really would have hoped to see more from him in a game without Hunter Renfrow. So I don't know. I think I'm definitely nervous, and like usually just like secondaries that are good all around and well coached, like they can cause problems for opposing tight ends.
Jacobs almost got there last week. He almost got 5 targets.
Yeah. The pass game work was there for Jacobs last week. That's the last guy I was going to bring up. I think he's
you got to use him. You got to use him if you're going to do some bringbacks, right? If you're going to double stack at all, need a run back. Yeah. You got Jacobs and Adams. I think Jacobs and Adams would be my preferred, just because we've already decided we have a take already, right? We want Pitts. We want Njoku. Like, we have plenty of tight ends to play this week.
True.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to like all Waller.
Pitts is
now
still cheaper
too.
than Waller, right? I think
yes.
Waller's like 5,300.
He should not be cheaper than Waller. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, he should be basically, Waller and Njoku are very similar in how they're being used and their talent profile. And Njoku's
younger too.
Much cheaper though. Like, Njoku's still like 3.7K and Waller's still being priced like his
old Waller,
his production from the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the players that you can't get me interested in those types of players. But Russ has been throwing downfield. It just hasn't been connecting. There's gonna be a big Russ to Sutton boom week, and why not against the freaking Raiders, man?
Yeah.
Yep. I think you can. I absolutely think you can double stack Russ here. Please, someone report to the office and let me know who Russ is throwing to, if not Cortland Sutton and Jerry
Javonte.
Yeah. So Javonte's probably in. We should probably discuss him as well. He's probably in play, but that's the point. If the third guy is the committee running, is the 50-50 running back, it's not Alberto. KJ Hamler ain't ready, right? It's not Montrell Washington. It's not Tyree Cleveland. It's none of those guys.
Emergency QB Kendall Hinton.
Yeah, exactly. Hinton's got a better chance of throwing a touchdown than catching one from Russ. There's no one else, and they're both really, really cheap. I don't think you have to force a bring back. You can do Jacobs, you can do Devontae, but I think you can just load up on that. Seattle, right? Maybe you say this is Russ week, but I'm going to get all my pieces in from Seattle and Detroit and Atlanta and Cleveland and all that, and then just give me Sutton and Judy. I'm going to soak up all the Broncos points, and I think that's reasonable. And I do think you can play Javonte, of course, as well too.
Yeah,
I think I was going to play it like we were playing Lamar and Mark Andrews, except it just the 2 guys, and then you build around that, right? Where it's where you don't concentrate. I know this is the basically the game stack show, but if you're not game stacking, just Russ and Sutton. And Sutton. Russ and Sutton is the best value. That quarterback wide receiver combination is the best value on the slate this week.
Right. And I think that's part of the reason that people aren't really like gravitating toward that stack, is that the price on Russ is still, his salary is still kind of like semi-elite quarterback. Like he's priced closer to Justin Herbert than he is to Geno Smith and Marcus Mariota. So if people are, approaching this game or this slate, like, we can't, if we're not going to pay up for Lamar and Josh Allen, like, let's just go cheap. Why stop at Russ? So I think that's like perhaps a hole that we can exploit, get our Russ stacks in the week that people are forgetting about him. And then the point I was going to add with Jacobs too is, all offseason, we were worried about this being, a 4-man committee backfield, right? And really, it's just turned out to be 2. Like, Zamir White has hardly seen the field, and Amir Abdullah or Brandon Bolden, whichever one's in the game that week, is the pass catching back. But they're not both really on the field in the same game. and you're seeing a lot of work for Jacobs, more than I think most of us were projecting preseason. So he's definitely a good volume play.
Love that. So we hit our five games. I did want to something I do always on Sunday. I want to go really quickly around and be, what is the one thing that you have to have in a, we'll do it from a stack perspective. What's the game? Or maybe what's the stack, whatever. It could be a secondary skinny stack. What's the stack that you have to have on Sunday to take down a tournament? Dario, you go first.
Well, there's so many choices.
I know.
I'm going to say, I think it's going to be, bread and butter, Jalen Hurts with AJ Brown, bring it back with Kirk. I from the moment I looked at this slate, I'd love being able to bring back that Eagles stack with Christian Kirk, the way he's been crushing this year. And I think I'm of the belief that the Jaguars do make this more of a game than most people think. I don't know why they're 6.5 point underdogs. That seems pretty harsh. And that's for me, my go-to.
Okay. So I love that. I also love Russ Sutton. I'm right there with you. Right. I'm right there with you. Like Hurts, Brown, Russ Sutton, like one's expensive, one's less expensive. Like if you want to fit in another elite player, you can go Wilson Sutton. If you want to play Pitts and you want to, pay for a little bit more expensive guys. Those are two great options. I do believe a random lion will be in the Millie Maker. A random lion's going to be in there, whether it's Raymond or Reynolds, a random lion is going to get in there. But if I had to say skinny stack, I'm with, especially on DraftKings, I'm with Eric, a penny shark.
Yes. So I was also going to go with the Seahawks Lions game. I do think my honorable mention, I'm cheating and giving two. My honorable mention is when Dario mentioned Njoku's price. So I do tags in lineup HQ every single week, and I'm just scrolling through the slate, figuring it out on Wednesday or whatever. I snap tagged David Njoku at 3,700. I was just like, what is going? Why is he 3,700? And you mentioned Darren Waller. Why is Darren Waller almost 6,000 and David Njoku's 3,700? That didn't make sense. So I like him. And probably London would be the correct pairing with Njoku, but it's definitely Seahawks Lions for me. I can't get this Rashad Penny 4,900 price out of my head. Matt almost talked me into Josh Reynolds. Almost talked me into Josh Reynolds.
But I think I'm gonna this week, baby.
I'm in on Reynolds, but a Lions receiver and Rashad Penny. We're going to run back week 17 from last year. Rashad Penny, 153 or whatever it was. And someone's just going to have to step into the Amon-Ra shoes. Maybe it's Khalif Raymond. I don't know. But somebody, it's not TJ Hawkinson. That's my conviction in the whole game. Is it's one of the wide receivers that are going to smash. So I think that about covers it. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. That was the week 4 Roto Underworld Stackfest, and a lot to monitor. Make sure to check that weather on Sunday. Make sure to check all these inactives because there's a lot of guys questionable, and we will see you guys in week 5.